Hello guys, so today we are moving on to epidemiology fourth part. So reference texts are the same, Subin Peter and Park. So today we are dealing with experimental epidemiology. I have already told a brief introduction about experimental epidemiology. Okay, so how is it differ from other studies? Okay, what is an experimental epidemiology? This is very important. This itself was asked as an MCQ. Okay, how experimental epidemiology is differing from other studies, because the conditions in which the studies are carried out are under the direct control of the investigator. So concentrate on that red colored text, under the direct control of the investigator. So here we decide. Okay, for example, if you're doing some experiments in lab, we are the authority, right? So it is under our control. So that is what an experimental epidemiology does. Everything will be under our control. So all the procedures or all the studies are carried out under the direct control of the investigator. So just think what all things we have studied in observational analytical, we are just observing. There is nothing to control. We are just observing things. We are just letting things to happen it like that. We are not controlling anything, and we are just observing how the disease varies and what are the patterns of the disease. But here everything is under the direct control of the investigator. Clear? Okay, so, what does it involve? It involves some action, that is, an intervention or a manipulation. Either it can be a deliberate application or withdrawal of a suspected cause. If there is application or if it is withdrawal, if anything, if it is application or if it is withdrawal, these both are under the control of the investigator, because the investigator only decides whether to apply something or the investigator only decides whether to withdraw something. So that is what it is doing, or it is done under the direct control of the investigator. Okay, or it involves changing one variable in the experimental group while making no change in the control group and observing and comparing the outcome of experiments in both groups. Okay, that is another scenario. We are just making changes in the experimental group, and just we will have a control group just to compare, and we are not making any changes in the control group. Okay, and just for comparison. So that is a brief introduction about experimental epidemiology. So remember here, everything is carried out under the direct control of the investigator. Clear? Now let's see what are the aims. Okay, so we have learned what is the ultimate aim for a descriptive epidemiology: to create or to make a formulation of an etiological hypothesis. And what is the aim for an analytical epidemiology? It was to test the fitness of a formulated etiological hypothesis. Now, what is the most important aim for a experimental epidemiology? Is to provide scientific proof. Okay, here we are providing a scientific proof through the experimental studies. Okay, so to provide a scientific proof of the etiological or risk factors which may permit the modification or control of those diseases. So we are investigating something and we are experimenting that particular thing, which can, what it can do, it can either modify or it can either control those diseases. Okay, so we are providing a scientific proof or the proof of the etiological or risk factors. So under analytical study, so start the example of smoking and lung cancer. Okay, so we have created a hypothesis in descriptive epidemiology: smoking this much of cigarettes can cause lung cancer, and we have tested for the fitness of that particular hypothesis in analytical epidemiology using a cohort study design. So we understood that it is smoking is responsible for lung cancer. Now we want to provide a scientific proof, that is, this is the particular etiological agent. That is what experimental study design does. Okay, and to provide a method of measuring the effectiveness and efficacy of health services for the prevention, control, and treatment of the disease, and to improve the health of the community. For this also, you can use experimental epidemiology. We can measure the effectiveness of some health interventions using experimental study design, and finally to improve the health of the people. Clear? Okay, animal studies. Okay, experimental reproduction of human diseases in animals to confirm etiological hypothesis and to study the pathogenetic phenomena or mechanisms. So, this experimental study designs can also be done in animals, but for the reproduction of human diseases in animals, not exclusively for animal diseases, but it is a reproduction of human diseases in animals, and to study the pathogenicity of phenomena or other kind of mechanisms. For example, vaccines and all, we usually first we'll test it in the animals, right? Like that. Next is testing the efficacy of preventive and therapeutic measures such as vaccines and drugs. Just now I told you. Okay, What are the advantages and disadvantages of an experimental study design? It can be bred in laboratories and it multiply rapidly. Okay, so this is peculiar for animal studies. Okay, we can it is can be controlled in laboratories and it multiply rapidly. What are the disadvantages? We cannot replicate all the human diseases, and conclusions right may not be strictly applicable. So this is the disadvantages and advantages of animal studies. Okay, in which we are reproducing human diseases in animals. Okay, okay, let's see about human studies. Okay, the human experiments will always be needed. Okay, we cannot introduce a drug or vaccine without without just by doing animal studies. We always need human experiments. Okay, so to investigate the disease etiology and to evaluate the preventive and therapeutic measures, so human studies have its own weightage and human studies is always needed. Okay, so the first we can go back to the historical perspective. So in historically, in 1747, James Lind, okay, he performed the first human experiment in which he added different substances to the diet of 12 soldiers who were suffering from scurvy. Yeah, so this was considered as the first experimental study. Okay, so James Lind, he had modified or he had added different substances to the diet of 12 soldiers who were suffering from scurvy. Okay, so that was the first experimental study design that was done in 1747 or first clinical trial. Okay, and finally what he had found out was that those who had taken more amount of citrus fruits, that is like vitamin C containing fruits, had got better relief uh, from scurvy. So that was his experiment and that was the outcome of his experiment. Okay, and let's move on to the classification of experimental studies. It is classified into randomized control trials and non randomized control trials. That is a broad classification. Okay, this randomized control trials and non randomized control trials. That is, if there is a randomization is involved, it is randomized. If there is no randomization, that is non randomized. Okay, so other examples of randomized control trials are field trials, community trials, etc. So, broad is randomized and non randomized. Now let's see what are the basic steps in conducting a RCT. So now you should know what is an RCT. RCT is a randomized control trial. Okay, so a procedure that involves randomization. Okay, I'll explain everything in detail. So what are the steps? The first and the foremost important thing is drawing up a protocol. We should have a strict protocol for doing an RCT. Okay, then setting a reference and an experimental population. Okay, then most important step is randomization. Then we have manipulation or intervention, follow-up and assessment of the outcome. Clear? So let's see each step in detail. First one is protocol. So what is a protocol? A protocol is like a detailed explanation of each and everything that what you are going to do, step by step explanation. So we should have a systematic idea or systematic strategies we should have before implementing or before starting with an RCT. So basically it involves aims and objectives, the questions to be answered, criteria, size of the sample, procedure for allocation, the schedule of the study, responsibilities and standardization of working procedures. Everything should be detailed in detail. Everything should be written properly. That is what the protocol means. Okay, so this is a very important step and you have already seen that this is a new addition. You have not seen it in any of the previous study design, so this is a new addition. Okay, so that is what protocol means. Okay, next step is selecting reference and experimental population. So reference or target population is what? It is the population to which the findings of the trial, if found successful, are expected to be applicable. So that is what a reference population. So if the findings of the trial, if found successful, we can apply or we can generalize the results to the reference population. So what is a study population? Study population is derived from the reference population. Okay, I'll tell you an example. If in a class there are 50 students and we are selecting 10 from that 50 students and we are conducting the study on the 10 students, so that 10 students will be our study population. So we are doing study on that 10 students, right? And if the study results are found to be successful, we can generalize the results to the entire 50 people, that is to the entire class. So that is the target population. So I hope it is clear. So it should specify or it should have three important criteria. First and foremost is informed consent. So in an RCT, in every study, informed consent is very, very important. The participant or the volunteers or the persons who are subjected to any kind of experiments or any kind of studies, anything, we should have a consent from them, that is they are ready to participate in our study, that is the detailed explanation of the study has been given to them, what are the side effects or what are the benefits, everything has been studied, and they are like willing to participate in the study. That is what informed consent means. So there should be an informed consent, there should be a proof, okay. And representatives of the population, that is the study population should be the representative of the population and should be qualified or eligible people should be there, that is it should, they should meet the inclusion and exclusion criteria, okay. That is what the second step. The next step is randomization, okay. So this is the core step in an RCT. So this is frequently being asked as an MCQ, which is the heart of a randomized control trial, or which is the important step, or which is the core thing in a RCT. So this is randomization, that is why it is known as a randomized control trial. So the heart of an RCT is randomization. So what is randomization? It is a statistical procedure by which the participants are allocated into groups, into two groups, usually called as the study groups and the control groups, okay. So why we are doing randomization? In order to avoid selection bias. So as a result of randomization, every individual will get an equal chance of being allocated into the either group. So this is very important. Randomization is the core step in an RCT. So what does randomization does? It eliminates selection bias and it will give equal chance for each and every individuals of being allocated into the either groups. Okay. So what is importance of randomization? See, if you want to do a study, okay, for example, just consider this example. We are doing a study on gingivitis among the pubertal students, okay, for example 15-16-year-old students, okay. We want to see the effectiveness of a mouthwash in the students of 15-year-old children, okay. So we are going to a class, for example 10th standard, okay, and we have to select the students, okay. So we have to select our study population, right, okay. The target population is the class, from that we have to select our study population. So for selecting the study population, we can't blindly select like first 10 roll numbers fit into this group, first 15 roll numbers fit into this group, or like males should fit into this group, female should fit into this group. That is not the ideal method, that is wrong actually. We have to follow randomization, that is there are numerous techniques for randomization, okay, that is at a higher level. So you just understand what is randomization, what is the purpose of it. So it is basically allocating a people, okay. We are randomly for example, there is a random number table. From that table we'll choose certain numbers, and from that numbers, for example 3, 4, 5, like that. So those people will fit into the uh, study group, and 4 will fit into the control group. There is a format, okay, there are certain numbers, so we'll select that number. So the first number will fit into the study group, the next will go to the control, study control, like that. So that will avoid the chance of selection bias. So every individual, so for example, if in a class of 50 students, we'll tell like first 10 should go to the study group and next 10 should go to the control group, the remaining 30 will be like purposely eliminated, right? So in this, there is a chance for each and every one. So it will cover the entire 50, okay, to be a part of the study, okay. So that is what randomization does, and also it eliminates selection bias, okay. It means if you are selecting blindly, it can cause misinterpretation or misleading results, okay. So that is what selection bias means. So that is not the ideal procedure, so it will result in a bias or an error. So you already know what does a bias means, okay. So that is what. So next, you just go through the terms, okay, terminologies. We have, as I told you earlier, we have different methods for randomization. You just understand the basic names. That is simple. We have simple randomization, blocked randomization, and stratified randomization. This much is enough. I haven't seen any questions pertaining to this particular topic. If anything is there, I'll explain it to you later in the miscellaneous topics or somewhere else, okay. So the next step is manipulation. So what is manipulation? That is what we are giving an intervention, that is to manipulate something. So we are doing everything under the direct control of the investigator, okay. So the next step is to intervene or to manipulate the experimental group, okay. We are only manipulating the experimental group, okay. So how we are going to manipulate? by deliberate application or withdrawal or reduction of the suspected causal factor. We can either apply, we can try out new things, or we can either withdraw, or we can reduce the thing that already the people are consuming, or already they are under some kind of treatment now. So we can taper the dose. For example, I'm just telling an example. So everything will comes under manipulations. Okay, so that is what. So this manipulation will automatically creates an independent variable and a dependent variable. So what is an independent variable? For example, the drug, vaccine, whose effect is then determined by the measurement of the final outcome, which constitute the dependent variable. So which one is the final outcome? So the outcome measure is our dependent variable. That is the incidence of the disease or survival time. And this is caused due to what? Because of certain drugs or due to some vaccines. No? So that is the independent variable, and the outcome variable is the dependent variable. So in the case of for example, just understand an example. We are checking for the efficiency of a mouthwash among two class of people, that is males and females. Any just consider an example. So the incidence of gingivitis will be the dependent variable, and the gender will be our independent variable, because we categorize them into males and females. Okay, so that is what the dependent variable and independent variable means. So outcome variable is always the dependent variable, and what are the factors that is contributing, or factors that creates the outcome. Okay, so that is an independent variable. Okay, that is either due to drug or due to vaccine, whose effect is then determined by the measurement of the outcome. So that is independent variable, and the outcome variable is the dependent variable. Clear? Okay. Next is follow-up. So what is follow-up? It is the examination of the experimental and the control group at defined intervals of time in a standard manner with equal intensity under the same given circumstances and in the same time frame till the assessment of the final outcome. So what we have to do, since we have two groups, we have study groups as well as we have control groups, and we are supposed to examine both the groups. Since we are not doing any intervention in the control group, we are not supposed to discard them. We have to measure them as well. So at equal intervals of time, at defined intervals with equal intensity and in the same time frame till the final outcome assessment. Okay. Last one is assessment. The final step is the assessment of the outcome of the trial in terms of positive results, that is whether the incidence of the disease is reduced or any severity is reduced, something like that. And negative results also we have to assess severity and frequency of side effects. Okay, in this incidence of positive and negative results is compared in both the groups. So it is all about comparison that we have already studied. So after making comparison, we will reach into a final outcome. Okay, final assessment. Okay, so that was the last step. Okay, so we have completed the steps. So next, just briefly see the design of a randomized controlled trial. So first step is we have to select a suitable population. Protocol is there. I'm just telling a brief sketch. Okay, so after selecting a suitable population, we have to select the study population, that is our sample. Okay, then we have to make necessary exclusions, that is we have some criteria, right? So these people can be only included in our study, so other people we have to exclude. Okay, and consent, who are not able to ready to give the consent, they are also excluded. Okay, then comes randomization. Clear? Then we are divided into two groups, experimental and control group. Then only we are supposed to see what is the case and what all things we are going to do, everything. So that is manipulation, follow up, and then assessment. So it's clear, no? Okay, so next is bias. Okay, you have already learned bias. This experimental study also carries or also also has a bias within it. So we can just see the biases. What are the different types of bias? We have subject variation, observer bias, and evaluation bias. Okay, so subject variation, as the name suggests, it is because of the subjective difference in the perception among the study subjects. Okay, if the subjects already knew that they are into the study groups, so they will expect some kind of reduction. If we are measuring some intensity of the disease, they will expect some kind of reduction in the disease by themselves. That is because they already knew that they are subjected to some kind of treatment or some kind of modification in their normal regime, so they will expect, okay, so that expectation will result in a misleading reporting by the subjects in that particular study group. So that is what subject variation means. Then observer bias is like the person who is observing the results. If he already knows that the that what is kind of the treatment, or what is the drug, or what is the actual manipulation that has been subjected to which group, and which is the study and which is the control group, then he is already biased. So there is naturally he will give or he, when he analyzes, this thing will be there in his mind, and he'll give a misleading result that is maybe favoring the study group. So that maybe it can be right or it can be wrong, right? So sometimes it is like correct only, sometimes it will be like the better group was, or the better results was seen in the control group. So since he already knew this, he may favor the study group. So that is observer bias. Then evaluation bias, the investigator already knows that which is the study group and which is the control group. He is also biased, and he can subconsciously he'll favor the study group. So that is the different types of bias. So to eliminate bias, we have to do blinding. Okay, so what is a blinding? Blinding is necessarily done in order to eliminate bias. So we have a single blinded trial, we have double blinded trial, and we have triple blinded trial. Okay, so what is single blind trial? So to evaluate that subjective variation, the participants will be blinded. They won't know like to which group they are allocated to which treatment they are being given. So they're totally blinded. So that is what single blind. Double blind means the participants as well as the investigator is blinded. Okay. So investigator, neither the investigator nor the participants know to which group they are subjected to or to which treatment they are subjected to. So triple blind trial, participants, investigator, and the person who is analyzing is also blinded. So all problems are cleared. So that is what single, double, and triple blind trial means. Clear? Okay. Now let's see what are the types of randomized control trial. Randomized control trial, we have different types. First is a clinical trial. Okay, so it is just an experimental design that is used by a clinician. This clinical trial is usually to evaluate the drugs and the clinical or healthcare procedures. For example, you have already seen, or you have already heard a number of times about COVID vaccines and the clinical trials regarding COVID vaccine. So that is what clinical trial means. So what we have to specify, or we have to more give emphasize, is like it has got different phases, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so what is a phase 1? So every clinical trial has to pass these phases. So in the phase 1, they will decide the pharmacology and safety of a drug or a vaccine. Okay, in phase 2, it is the therapeutic exploration. They will fix the dose ranging. So safety is done, next is dose ranging, and phase 3 is a very important phase. So it is a therapeutic confirmation and comparison with the gold standard. Okay, we will confirm and we will compare with the gold standard. And phase 4 is the post marketing surveillance trial. So once it is marketed, we are doing after marketing some kind of surveillance. So that is a 4 phases. Okay, so what is being repeatedly asked is about phase 3. So this is very important. Phase 3 is the classic stage of a clinical trial, which is also known as RCT, or randomized control trial. So phase 3 is the classic stage, which is known as randomized control trial. So that is about clinical trials. So next we have preventive trials. Okay, it is the most frequently occurring type of preventive trial, and similarly it is about usually done in trials of vaccines and chemoprophylactic drugs. Next we have risk factor trials. As the name suggests, it is a preventive trial, and it is a trial of the risk factors in which the investigator intervenes to interrupt the risk factors of a disease. For example, cigarette smoking and lung cancer. So cigarette smoking is the uh, risk factor, and another risk factor of coronary heart diseases are like cholesterol, smoking, hypertension, and sedentary habits. So here these risk factors they will try to interrupt. So the intervention is to interrupt the risk factors. Okay, and cessation experiments. Another one is cessation experiment. So it is an attempt to make to evaluate the termination of a habit or removal of a suspected agent. The best example is, again, as I told you earlier, cigarette smoking and lung cancer. Okay, cessation. We are trying to avoid that habit. Next is trials of etiological agents. It is like we are just trying to confirm or refute the refute an etiological hypothesis. Using an experimental epidemiology, we'll just either confirm this is the suspected cause, or we'll reject this is not the suspected cause. That is what trials of etiological agent means. And the last one is evaluation of health services. Okay, that is like we are assessing the effectiveness and efficiency of the health services. Okay, that is, for example, consider an example of a huge India, our country. So we have a number of fluoridating, we have a fluoridation programs like Pitt and Fisher. Okay, so many fluoride varnish and all these kinds of things has been given. So why water fluoridation is not there? Since it is very difficult to implement water fluoridation in our country. So how we got to know? So that is what this evaluation of health service is very important. So the water fluoridation, since it is not possible in our country, other methods of fluoridation we are giving. So that is how we got to know by evaluating the health services. Okay, so that is what we have to assess the effectiveness and efficiency of the health services available. That is also with the help of trials. Clear? So, Pitt and Fisher sealants and other fluoride therapies, when we are comparing those both, we should know which one should be more effective. That is, which can cause more reduction in dental caries. So, according to that, that policy should be implemented and that policy should be adopted. That is what evaluation of health services means. Clear? Next is community intervention trials. Okay, the treatment groups are communities rather than the individuals. That is what a community intervention trials means. For example, testing of a vaccine. Okay, and another one is field trials. Field trials, in contrast to clinical trials, the people who are disease free but they are presumed to be at risk. It is similar to clinical. It is not similar. It is in contrast to clinical trials, but here people are not diseased but they are at risk. And data collection takes place in the field, and field trials are often huge undertakings involving major logistic and financial consideration, because it is directly involving the, that is, into the fields. So many people will be there, so it will take huge amount. Okay, so that finishes our RCTs. Now we are moving on to non-randomized controlled trials. Just understand the terms. Okay, we have uncontrolled trials, natural experiments, and before and after comparison studies. Uncontrolled trials are like without any control or without any comparison. Natural experiments, for example, with the help of with occurrence of a natural calamity or a disaster, for example earthquake. Okay, the location itself has been divided into two categories, right? So so naturally the with the help of earth or a mother god, it has been it has created a disaster. Okay, so it has been naturally divided into two different groups, that is people who are affected due to earthquakes and without being not affected with earthquake. So that is what natural experiments, without any intervention or without anything, with the by the nature itself, it has made into two stratas. Okay, next is before and after comparison studies. It is like we are giving something and we are comparing it before and we are comparing it after. That is what just before and after comparison studies. Okay, so next is question time. I'm giving you few pictorial representation for self assessment. Okay, I'm not giving you the answers purposely. I'm not giving, so you try find it out. If you have any doubts, if you're not able to answer, okay, if you have any confusions, you can message, you can ask me doubts. Okay, so first one is smoking causes lung cancer. It is just look into the arrow mark. Okay, second one is also a study design. It was in the year 2020 the disease happened and the cause. Okay, it is like backwards. And third one is also study design. A small population is evaluated today. Okay, from a whole circle is a general population, from that a sample is selected and a small population is evaluated today. So you can find out the answers easily. Okay, so next is, these are the important measurements or important rate ratios and all. So which study design will give you all these? So I'm not giving you the answers again. You try find it out, and if you're confused, you can contact me. Okay, so incidence is given in which study design. This is each and everything I've mentioned in detail in my previous PPTs. So if you have any doubt, just go back and revise. Okay, so rather than me giving the answers, it will be easier for you to when you think and answer no, and you just have to cross check also. So if it is correct, that will give you confidence and it will stay in your mind. if it is wrong also doesn't matter, you can go back, revise, and that also will stay in your mind for long. Okay, so incidence, prevalence, odds ratio, relative risk, scientific proof, formulation of a hypothesis, fitness of a hypothesis, natural history, and treatment effect, everything has been described in the respective study design. So which of these um, which of these ratios is given by which kind of study design? Okay, so that you just, that is your homework, you just try to find out the answers. Okay, so we have come to end of all the study designs. So that principles of epidemiology chapter is almost complete, but in that chapter you try, when you try to solve out MCQs, you can see some overlapping things, that is like it has yet to be taken, that will be dealt in the following sessions. Okay, so that first chapter you try, solve it out, solve the MCQs, and if you have any doubt, message, contact, and I'll be glad to clear your doubts. Okay, this is very important, since this is the base. Okay, see, you all are PG aspirants, so when you are trying for a PG and when you have taken a post graduation, no, there is no one, nobody will teach you all the things. Okay, so this is the base level. So this is very essential for you to comprehend any kind of article or journal. So without journal and articles, you can't survive in the PG life. So that is what I'm telling you. Learn it right from here only. Okay, it will be easier for you. Okay, thank you.